Ask almost anyone what makes a human being the image of God, and you will get a list of invisible traits. You will hear about human intelligence. You will hear about our moral compass, our capacity for complex art, our free will, or the existence of an immortal soul. When a modern reader hits that sentence, the immediate instinct is to look for a reflection. We think, God reasons, therefore we reason. God makes choices, therefore we make choices. We assume the text is describing a mirror. Listen again to the phrasing in Genesis 1:26. Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion. Not him, not the king, not the high priest, them. The text takes the most exclusive, heavily guarded political title in the ancient Near East and strips it off the pharaoh. It tears it away from the Babylonian emperors, and it hands it to the entire human race. It democratizes the image of God. Think about what that meant for the original audience. The Israelites had just spent 400 years in Egyptian slavery. That is roughly 20 generations of men and women born in the mud, beaten in the mud, and buried in the mud of the Nile Delta. They had been told every single day of their lives that they were nothing. But this psychological definition carries a devastating side effect. Think about the consequences. They were biological machinery. They were disposable tools meant to build monuments to the only man who actually mattered. And then Moses hands them Genesis 1. The text looks at a crowd of escaped, traumatized slaves and tells them that the empire lied. You are not cosmic peasants. You are not the accidental byproduct of a divine war. Every single one of you, from the tribal leader to the person gathering firewood, is an authorized physical proxy of the creator of the universe. You are royalty. This is the theological and political shockwave of the first page of the Bible. Genesis 1 is the birthplace of universal human dignity. If the image of God is restricted to a king, then the king can do whatever he wants to the peasant. But if the peasant is also the image of God, the entire power structure collapses. You cannot abuse, enslave, or murder an ordinary person without committing an act of cosmic treason. If the image of God is defined by human intelligence, what happens to the person whose mind is failing? To strike a human being is to vandalize the physical statue of the King of the universe. Suddenly, the image of God is no longer a weapon of subjugation. It is an impenetrable shield of human value. But Genesis does not stop at class lines. It does not merely distribute the crown to every man in the crowd. It crosses a boundary that the ancient world simply would not touch. If democratizing the image of God across all social classes was a political earthquake, what Genesis does next is a structural revolution. Look closely at the poetic rhythm of Genesis 1:27. The author shifts from standard prose into a three-line poem. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Notice the parallel structure. Line 1 establishes the image. Line 2 repeats it for emphasis, and line 3 defines exactly who carries it, male and female. In the ancient Near East, that third line is unthinkable. Ancient hierarchies were brutal, and they were rigidly gendered. The gods spoke to the king. If the image of God is our capacity for moral reasoning, what happens to the infant or the person with a severe cognitive disability? The king spoke to the priests spoke to the men. Women existed at the bottom of the pyramid. If you read the Code of Hammurabi, a Babylonian legal system carved into a massive diorite pillar centuries before Genesis, a woman's value is frequently calculated in shekels of silver. If a pregnant woman of a lower class was struck and killed, the offender often simply paid a fine to her father or husband. In other cases, he handed over his own daughter to be executed in her place. property had been damaged, a biological asset had been lost. A woman was a subordinate tier of humanity. She was certainly not the localized, authorized physical proxy of the creator of the cosmos. Genesis completely ignores this hierarchy. It bypasses every legal code in the ancient world. It goes straight to the bedrock of human origins. If we tie the image to a specific set of human capacities, we have accidentally tied human dignity to a sliding scale. The text does not say that the man is the image of God and the woman is a secondary reflection. It does not hand the crown to the husband and the plow to the wife. It permanently fuses the highest royal title in the universe to both halves of the human race. You cannot have the full image of God without the female. Think about the consequence of that one sentence. It means that the poorest, most marginalized woman gathering fallen grain at the edge of an ancient wheat field possessed exactly the same cosmic authority as the pharaoh sitting on a golden throne in Memphis. She's not an accessory to the image, she is the statue of the deity. The dignity of the image of God is now locked in. It belongs to the poor. It belongs to the weak. It belongs to both genders. But a royal title in the ancient world was never just a badge of honor. It came with an empire to run. Genesis 1 does not just distribute a title. It attaches a massive, demanding job description. Because the image of God was never intended to be a status we passively hold. It is a vocation. The biblical text does not do that. Genesis does not locate the image in a capability you can lose. The moment Genesis 1 announces the image, it attaches an immediate consequence. The text does not pause. It does not wait for a new paragraph. It ties the title directly to an action verb. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion. If you want to know what the image of God actually is, you have to look at what it was commanded to do. The image is not just a biological status you passively possess, it is a vocation. You are the authorized proxy of the Creator, and your job is to represent His authority by ruling the world on His behalf. But that creates a massive translation problem for the modern reader. When we hear the word dominion, we instinctively think of a bulldozer. We think of exploitation, extraction, and tyranny. We imagine humanity being handed a blank check to strip mine the planet and consume its resources. We read the text backward through the lens of modern industrialization. Because the ancient world did not use the word image to describe what a creature could think or feel, they used it to describe what a creature was authorized to represent. The Hebrew word for this rule is rada. It is royal vocabulary, but in the ancient Near East, the ideal king was not supposed to be a tyrant. He was supposed to be a shepherd. The ultimate measure of an ancient king was not how many forests he could burn down or how much wealth he could hoard, but whether the widows in his city were protected and the fields produced enough grain. You can see exactly how the Bible defines Rada by looking at Psalm 72. It is a prayer for the king of Israel. It asks God to let the king rule, Rada, from sea to sea. And what does that rule look like? The psalm tells us the king delivers the needy. He rescues the poor from violence. And as a direct result of his reign, the land explodes with abundance. Grain waves on the mountaintops. The cities flourish. When a first-generation Israelite, freshly liberated from Egyptian slavery, heard the phrase, image of God, their mind did not drift toward philosophy. That is biblical dominion. It is not the power to exploit, it is the responsibility to cultivate. God builds a cosmic temple. He tames the chaos, orders the world, and fills it with life. Then he places humanity in the middle of it and says, now it is your turn. Take it further. To be the image of God means taking the raw, untamed potential of the earth and actively driving it toward abundance. When you plant a vineyard, you are imaging God. When you design a bridge, you are imaging God. When you establish a just legal system, raise a child, or bring order to a fractured community, you are doing exactly what you were created to do. You are acting as the physical proxy of the Creator. You are making His invisible character visible in the dirt of the real world. And once you understand that the image is a living, breathing, working vocation, one of the most famous and severe laws in the Old Testament suddenly makes perfect sense. Months after leaving Egypt, the Israelites stand at the base of Mount Sinai, and Moses reads them a list of 10 fundamental laws. Their mind went to stone. The first is about exclusive loyalty, but the second law immediately addresses architecture and art. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above or that is in the earth beneath. Why this absolute prohibition? The entire ancient Near East ran on physical idols. Every nation had them. Every temple required one. Most modern people read the second commandment and assume God is simply protecting His majesty. We think He's saying, "I am too infinite to be captured in a piece of stone," or "You might get the facial features wrong." And while it is true that God cannot be reduced to a physical object, that completely misses the structural reason for the law. God's prohibition against carved idols is not just about protecting His identity, it is about protecting ours. Think about the mechanism of an ancient idol. They thought of the towering monuments they had spent their lives building under the whip of Pharaoh. A craftsman cuts down a cedar tree. He strips the bark. He carves a face. He overlays the wood with hammered silver and sets it up in a corner. And then it just sits there. It does not speak. It does not breathe. It does not move. It does not cultivate the ground. It cannot rule. It cannot build. And it cannot love. It is static, deaf, and dead. Now hold that physical object against the narrative of Genesis 1. God has already placed His tselem in the cosmic temple. He already formed a statue out of the dust of the ground. But unlike the lifeless blocks of stone in the temples of Babylon, God's image has a heartbeat. It breathes, it thinks, it works, it rules. Humanity is the authorized living nexus point between heaven and earth. When a human being bows down to a piece of carved wood, they are committing a catastrophic act of self-sabotage. For centuries, we have treated Genesis chapter 1 as if it were a textbook on spiritual anatomy. They thought of the massive physical temples lining the Nile River. They are abdicating their royal vocation. You are the living, authorized, ruling proxy of the Creator. When you submit to a silent, dead piece of metal, you are taking the crown off your own head and placing it on a rock. You are demoting the living image into a static object. You are violently reversing the order of creation. This is why the later Israelite prophets mock idolatry so ruthlessly. Isaiah laughs at the man who uses half a log to bake his bread and uses the other half to carve a god. The mockery is not just about the foolishness of the wood, it is about the tragedy of the human. The prophet is watching a royal representative of the living God prostrate himself before firewood. Israel is forbidden from carving an image of Yahweh for one simple, absolute reason. God has already made one. They thought of the structures that dominated the horizon of the ancient Near East. You cannot manufacture a proxy for God because you are the proxy. To demand a statue is to reject your own existence. But as the biblical narrative unfolds, it becomes painfully clear that humanity did exactly that. We abandoned the vocation. We chose to rule the earth on our own terms, fracturing the image and filling the cosmic temple with violence. The proxy failed. And that failure sets up the climax of the entire biblical story. The story of humanity from Genesis 3 onward is the story of a fractured image. The vocation remains, but the execution is broken. Human beings were authorized to rule the world as God's proxies, pulling order out of chaos and driving creation toward flourishing. To understand what the Bible is claiming about human beings, you have to stop looking at the human brain and start looking at ancient architecture. Instead, we redefined good and evil on our own terms. We began ruling the earth like the tyrants of Egypt and Babylon, building empires out of violence, exploiting the weak, and using our power to serve ourselves. We retained the title, but we completely distorted the representation. We became mirrors reflecting only our own ambition. And that is why the New Testament writers use such specific, careful language when they introduce Jesus of Nazareth. They do not just call him a teacher. They do not just call him a prophet. They reach directly back into the vocabulary of the cosmic temple. The author of Hebrews writes that the Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact imprint of his nature. You have to understand how an image functioned in the physical world. The Apostle Paul writes to the church in Colossae, a city surrounded by Roman imperial statues, and declares that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. He uses the Greek word eikon. It is the exact translation of the Hebrew tselem. Paul is not just making a theological statement about Christ's divine nature. He is making a statement about humanity. Jesus is not just God arriving on earth. He is the first fully functional human being since Eden. He is doing what Adam failed to do. He is the ultimate, undistorted physical proxy. When Jesus touches a leper, heals a blind man, feeds a crowd. The Hebrew word Genesis uses for image is tselem and confronts a corrupt religious system. He is exercising dominion. He is ruling. He is actively driving back chaos and restoring flourishing, showing the world exactly what God's authority looks like when it is wielded correctly. And when he goes to the cross, he redefines that rule permanently. The ultimate king does not conquer by slaughtering his enemies. He conquers by letting his enemies slaughter him, absorbing the violence of the world to break its power. This is what it means to be the image of God. It is not an abstract list of psychological capacities. It is not an immortal soul hidden inside your chest. If you trace that specific word through the rest of the Old Testament, it appears 17 times. It is a royal physical vocation. It is the responsibility to act as the authorized representative of the Creator, driving back chaos, establishing justice, and bringing flourishing to the space you occupy. And according to the New Testament, the goal of the Christian life is to be actively restored to that original calling. Paul tells the Colossians that they are putting on a new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its Creator. The repair work has begun. You are not an accidental byproduct of a cosmic war. You are not disposable labor. Every person you lock eyes with, the person handing you your coffee, the person you argue with online, the person sleeping on the street, is an authorized physical proxy of the King of the universe. Treat them accordingly and recognize the weight of your own existence. You were placed in the cosmic temple for a reason. You have a world to cultivate. And in almost every other instance, it does not mean a metaphor. If this deep dive into Genesis completely changed how you see the opening pages of your Bible, the biggest thing you can do is subscribe, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Keep us in your prayers and God bless you. It means a physical three-dimensional statue. It means an idol. When an ancient Mesopotamian or Egyptian craftsman carved a tselem out of wood or stone, they were not creating a mere decoration. In the religious logic of the ancient Near East, a god was invisible and transcendent. We read the opening page of the Bible and assume it is handing us a checklist of psychological characteristics that separate us from the animals. But to interact with the physical world, that God needed a localized physical vessel. So a temple was built, the architecture was finalized, and the very last step in an ancient temple inauguration was the installation of the tselem. Priests would carry a carved statue into the innermost room, burn incense, and perform a ritual known as the opening of the mouth. They did not believe the chiseled block of wood or stone was actually the god. They were not stupid, but they believed the statue was the authorized nexus point. It was the designated location where the invisible deity's presence, power, and authority physically intersected with the material world. To care for the statue was to care for the god. To disrespect the statue was to invite cosmic fury. That same exact mechanism applied to human politics. But here is the problem with looking inside the human mind to find the image of God. Genesis never mentions a single one of those things, not the intellect, not the conscience, not the soul. An ancient emperor could not physically occupy every village in his empire. He could not stand on every border. So, when a king conquered a new territory, he would commission a massive stone monument of himself, his tselem, and have it hauled into the center of the conquered city. The statue was a proxy. It was a physical stand-in. When a peasant walked past that towering stone figure, the message was unmistakable. The king is not here, but his authority is. This land belongs to the man whose face is carved into this rock. To rebel against the statue was to rebel against the sovereign himself. This is the political and religious world Genesis 1 was written into, and it completely changes how we are supposed to read the opening chapter of the Bible. Genesis 1 is not structured as a biology textbook, it is structured as a temple inauguration. The ancient Hebrew audience who first heard this text was not asking Greek philosophical questions about the internal architecture of the human mind. For 6 days, God is building a cosmic sanctuary. He forms the structural pillars of the universe. He separates the chaotic waters. He lights the celestial dome. He fills the space with vegetation, birds, and sea creatures. The architecture is complete, the temple is finished. And then, as the very last act on the 6th day, God places his tselem in the center of the world. He does not carve it out of stone. He does not cast it in gold. He breathes into the dirt. The image of God is not a psychological trait hidden inside the human mind. It is a physical proxy. To them, the phrase, image of a god, was not a vague metaphor for human intelligence. It was a concrete, highly restricted and incredibly dangerous political and religious category. Humanity is placed in the cosmic temple of creation to make the invisible authority of the Creator physically visible on the earth. But in the ancient world, there was a catch. And it was a catch that kept 99% of the human population locked in the dust. If you walked into an Egyptian court or a Babylonian city in the ancient world and asked who the image of God was, nobody would point to a crowd. They would laugh at the question. They would point to one man, the king. In Egypt, the pharaoh was literally titled the image of Ra, or the image of Amun. In Mesopotamia, Assyrian and Babylonian kings claimed the exact same phrasing in their monumental inscriptions. The logic was mathematically brutal. The gods rule heaven. Genesis 1 is not giving us a spiritual anatomy lesson. It is making a radical, subversive political declaration. The king is their exclusive, physical representative. Therefore, the king rules the earth. It was a closed loop. The emperor held a total monopoly on divine access. He was the sole authorized mediator between the realm of the gods and the dirt of the ground. And if the king is the only image of the god, what does that make everyone else? We do not have to guess. We have the other creation texts that were circulating in the ancient Near East at the exact same time. Look at the Atrahasis epic or the Enuma Elish, the blockbuster creation myths of the ancient world. In those narratives, the gods get tired of doing manual labor. They are sick of digging irrigation canals. They are tired of harvesting crops. And we are going to strip away our modern assumptions, step into the ancient Near East, and reconstruct exactly what this phrase meant, how it functioned, and what it actually commanded humanity to do. So they slaughter a lower-tier rebellious god, mix his blood with the clay, and invent human beings to do the grunt work. For thousands of years, across empires that stretched from the Nile to the Euphrates, this was the unquestioned reality. Generations of men and women lived and died believing they were nothing more than cosmic peasants. The average person was not a royal representative. They were an agricultural drone. They were cheap, disposable labor, created strictly to feed the gods and serve the elite. They had no inherent dignity. They possessed no divine rights. They were biological machinery. If you died hauling stones for a pyramid, it did not matter. Let's look at how the text actually introduces the concept. Genesis 1:26 reads, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image, after our likeness.'" You were doing exactly what you were engineered to do. The title, Image of God, was not a celebration of universal human value. It was a weapon of mass subjugation. It was the ultimate piece of political propaganda. It existed to keep the emperor on a golden throne and the peasant trapped in the mud. And then, out of the desert, comes a text that takes that entire power structure and shatters it. When the author of Genesis records the creation of humanity, he uses the exact same vocabulary as the empires around him. He uses the word tselem. He uses the language of divine representation. He uses the vocabulary of kingship. But he alters the grammar, and in doing so, he drops a bomb into the ancient world.